Hey, welcome back to another episode of the She's Making an Impact podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ngom. Today, we are talking all about the next evolution of female leadership and creating a 20-hour work week. And so, as we dive into this, I just want to tell you a little story of kind of my journey with entrepreneurship. So I've been doing this, I've never actually had like a real full-time job. I went from college to getting my master's, living in Africa in between. And then after I got my master's, couldn't find a job. And that's when I became an accidental entrepreneur, which was a blessing in disguise, like not being able to find a job, blessing in disguise, right? And so going from being an entrepreneur, not knowing what the heck I was doing, to hearing all of these like messages and personal development of like, you need to want more, want bigger, you got to work hard, you got to hustle, you got to like do all these things. And especially with me being in network marketing, it was very much like shiny object syndrome. You want to get to the next rank, you got to hit Success Club, you got to do this, you got to do this. And so I was so driven by that like significance and achieving the next rank and all those things, that coupled with, we were broke financially, so I had to make it work, led to me really burning out. And TJ was a baby at the time, so he was one, and he was at that age where he just wanted to like run and play and like do all these things, and I was so tired. I ended up gaining 30 pounds, which sucks when you're in a health and fitness business, a little embarrassing, and getting sick all the time. So I was getting strep throat, I was getting the flu, like all these things. And every month I was like on the couch. And I just remember we had that little like baby gate. So he had his own like little prison that I had to put him in and kind of like block the couch, so that he couldn't escape, because I didn't have the energy to chase him. So I'm like trying to work hard and doing all these things, but getting so sick in the process. And I just remember as I started this business, She's Making an Impact, I'm like, I got to do things differently. I will not sacrifice time with my family or putting them first, right? At the expense of growing this business and my like my desire to have $1 million company or whatever that is. And man, I am so grateful that God has broken me from that desire, because I was so in that like in that space of like, we have to have $1 million business. And once we hit it, it was kind of like, okay, that's great. But just knowing like the $1 million company doesn't bring you happiness in the same way of like spending time with your family, right? Um, and so, as I've gone through this complete evolution of my own experience of going through having the successful business and everything, it really made me stop and think, like, what does it mean to have success? You gotta create that own definition. What is success according to you, not according to the world standard? Because if you go by the world standard, it means having a big house, having a nice car, a private jet, a yacht, and all these things. And man, so I was in Guatemala on, was this my very first mission trip? I was 19. And so I'm in Guatemala, and we're in this little village in the middle of nowhere. I don't remember where we were. And I remember meeting this man who was poor by American standards. And he was so happy. Like he was just like radiating joy. And I remember asking him, "Why are you so happy?" Because I was just genuinely curious. And he just goes, "I have my family, I have my God, I have nature, and I have shelter. I have everything that I need." And I just remember thinking, wow, that really is kind of like the key to success and happiness, right? It's not this constant desire of, I need the bigger, the better, the more, the more, the more. And as God has like broken me of wanting more all the time, I'm just like, wow, I am so content with what I have. And my definition of success is being able to serve God, put God first, be there for my family and prioritize them, and have a great business in the process. And it doesn't have to be an either or. It doesn't have to be where you're sacrificing, time with your family to make the business work. You don't have to do that. There are ways that you can set up your business where you're not hustling your face off. And I think a lot of times, especially if you're on social media and all these things, you're being told this message over and over again that you have to hustle if you want success. Like I remember reading Gary Vaynerchuk's book and seeing Grant Cardone and all these dudes. And at the end of your life, you're gonna look back and like if you ever like watch videos of people or somebody who is at the end of their life, they're in their 80s, they're in their 90s, um, they look back, they never say, I wanted a bigger house, right? They look back and they're like, man, I wish I had more time with my kids. I wish I was there for my kids when they were growing up. Of like that, ultimately, like what matters most? What matters most to you? So you have to be very, very clear on what your definition of success is, not the world's. And you gotta like you have to set up boundaries from like all these messages that we get bombarded with, because if you're not intentional about creating those boundaries, you're going to be inundated with these messages and get sucked back into the world and all the things that the world says that you should have and you should desire. And I hit a point this year actually where I was talking to my husband, I'm like, I would be totally fine if we just lived in our field in Senegal. I'm like, we have built a house on, we own, how much land do we own in Senegal? Probably close to 10 to 15 acres now in Senegal. We have a house there. We have like we could produce our own food. We have a well. I'm like, we could legit retire and go live in Senegal and kind of do our own thing. Probably won't do that unless the world goes crazy over the next couple of years, but you never know what's going to happen. But I hit that point where I was like, I like you, I don't necessarily care if we have a multi-million dollar company. I hit that point where I'm like, if we, and it's so interesting how God has like kind of crushed me of like what my definition of success is because of the world and what I was around and what I was surrounding myself with and the personal development and the whole coaching industry in general. So I was like, what ultimately matters? I don't need to have the $1 million company for my ego. Been there, done that. That doesn't bring you more joy and like fulfillment of having the $1 million company. You can say, I've had it, I've done it, but if it comes at the expense, which it didn't, thanks God, and I was able to set it up in a way where it didn't have to, but it's not worth it, right? So the next evolution of female leadership and entrepreneurship is really figuring out what is it that you want and that you desire.
Hey, it's Rachel. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Do you want to know how I've been able to work 20 hours or less per week so I can run this business and prioritize my family and what matters most? I put together a free video for you where I give you a behind the scenes look at my calendar and really break it down what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, why I'm doing it, so you can see how I intentionally spend my time. You can go get it right now at 20hoursuccess.com. So that's just the number 20hoursuccess.com.
And then creating your business in a way that honors those top priorities and your definition of success. You absolutely can create a multiple six-figure business. We've created a seven-figure business. Not that it matters how much money you make, like money's great, but you hit a point where it's not everything. Like once you take care of your basic needs and you can fund the things that matter, great. Like if you have $5 million compared to $1 million, it's just money that's sitting in the bank unless you're able to use that, reinvest it, and all of those things, right? So figuring out what is my definition of success. Okay, my definition of success. Um, Getting off the social media roller coaster. So if you can shelter yourself from the things of the world of like looking at Instagram, man, I'm so grateful I'm not on Instagram anymore. Like we are, but I'm not. And having a business that can create content for those platforms without you physically having to be there, of having the team members that can support you in doing that, of being able to create content without you being there, right? Part of my thing is looking at asking yourself this question: if I were to have a business that's generating, multiple six figures and I had a full-time income working part-time hours, what would that look like for you? What would that look like for you? What would open up for you if you were able to do that? And so over the past several years, like since I started this business, I've been working 20 hours a week. So like everything that we've created was with me working 20 hours a week. Very, very rarely more than that. But this year specifically is when God's like, nope, you're going back to school. So I'm like, and potentially homeschooling our son next year. So I'm now asking myself the question, what would it look like if I were to only work 10 hours a week? So to cut my hours in half. Okay. And so being really um, intentional and asking yourself these questions, what would it look like for me to do that? And then what would open up if I were able to do that? And so for me, it's going back to school, it's homeschooling. In order for you to make that your reality, what needs to happen? What needs to shift? And I was actually working with someone on our team who's going to be editing this podcast. And as we're looking at how can we cut her hours back but keep her really effective, I was like, let's look at the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule of 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your actions. And so just looking at where are the majority of our results coming from? It's only 20% of what I'm doing. Can I cut out 80% of what I'm doing and still get those results? Probably. We don't need to be on every single platform. Like we're looking at what like the results we're getting from Instagram and we're just like, is it worth our time to actually do this? I don't know. Maybe our time is spent better elsewhere. But looking at what would it look like for me to be able to create the full-time income on part-time hours? What would that look like? Okay. And so my question for you after sharing the story and kind of going, I want you to like really, I want you to take this episode and I want you to actually journal and figure out what's important to you. What is your definition of success? What does that look like? And if you were to create that full-time business on part-time hours, what would you be able to create? What would open up for you? Because having a great business is awesome. It's so much fun, but it doesn't have to be your entire life. Like I'm all about how can we have life first, prioritize the things that matter, and you have a great business at the same time. So like it's Monday. On Thursday, we're getting ready to leave for Hawaii. We're going to be in Hawaii. Then I'm going to be in California, then Chicago, then Oklahoma, then back in Florida. So essentially the next month is going to be madness and chaos, but in the most fun way as we're able to like take family vacations and do these really cool things and put family first. So what would that look like for you? So what is the next evolution of female leadership and entrepreneurship? Ultimately, it's doing things on your terms with your vision of success in mind, not the world's. Okay. It's you being able to lead your business on purpose and understanding that it's more about just more revenue and more clients. It's about living the life that you were meant to live and creating that freedom lifestyle that you were meant to have. Because you don't have to be working 40 hours a week to have it. You don't have to be working 80 hours a week to have it. You don't have to be on social media. You don't have to be hustling your face off. You can do things on your terms. And one of the biggest things that I've learned over the past 12 years is whatever 98% of the population is doing, do the opposite. So if you see everyone on social media doing these things, do the opposite, and that's when things will really open up for you. If you want some support making this happen, I actually created a video for you on how I broke down my work week. It's called the 20-hour work week. So if you just go to 20hoursuccess.com, the number 20hoursuccess.com, I broke it down for you so you can see how I spend my time, what I focus on, the things that actually move the needle, and then you can take that and kind of implement that into your own business. I hope you found this helpful. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Bye.